So by that point, years of cocaine use had left me literally unable to grow hairs in my nose. Especially after one phase, I was afraid of getting carpal tunnel syndrome from constantly chopping the coke, so I would just take a rock, insert it in my nostril, and hold it there while it dissolved. Oh, people have accused me of abusing cocaine. I never abused cocaine, physically or emotionally. I treated my cocaine with the utmost respect, keeping it in a cool, dark place to preserve freshness. Martha Stewart suggests a sealed Tupperware container, uncooked rice to absorb the moisture. My own preference is for an antique humidor, a bequest from a favorite aunt. Well, concern over the health of my septum led me to consider various alternatives. One alternative you'll notice I never considered was not doing cocaine. But one, however, I did try was taking an empty vitamin capsule, filling it with the drug, and inserting it anally. This produces a much stronger reaction than snorting, full body rushes, even mild hallucinations. But I missed that champagne tingle on the roof of my mouth. Finally, I hit on the technique of tickling my nose with a Q-tip to induce sneezing. This moisturizes the nose naturally, and I can continue snorting. In my compulsiveness, of course, I actually became addicted to the sneezing, like the snuff users in Restoration England, who regarded the sneeze as a second orgasm. Well, this new habit of mine is no big deal at home, but there aren't too many places where you can sit around in public, stick a Q-tip up your nose, and induce sneezing. Evidently, it's frowned upon at some of our better restaurants. So I cultivated a number of sanctuaries around town, and among my favorites was the top floor of the stairwell at the old Ansonia Hotel, a Gilded Age behemoth on Upper Broadway. I could sit there in relative privacy, tickle, sneeze, and if anybody came upon me, I'd simply say, "I'm waiting for my voice lesson." In those days, everybody at the Ansonia was waiting for his voice lesson. I tell you this as a way of explaining why I was in the Ansonia that day, when I first saw the great actress Vera Czymilitude. She was wearing an old bedspread and mismatched earrings, feeling through the unclaimed letters left on top of the mailbox, looking for credit cards.
Right at the top, in this Russian style, there's sharpness of rhythm combined with a swoop. The last night we spent together. So to really spend together, and then
The last night we spent together.
Right.
You left without saying goodbye.
I think you can invest goodbye with more of the poignancy of what that meant. You left without saying.
You left without saying.
You left.
You left without.
You left without
saying goodbye.
Really suffer and use the rhythm and the lines and the timing. Don't rush yourself. Let's do the whole beginning.
The last night we spent together, you left without saying goodbye, leaving one question unanswered. Was it you, or was it I?
Remember thee! Remember! Remember!
Now, it's wonderful. wonderful section here. I believe, because we have a long way to go, that the first time it must be a simple question. Who slept on the wet spot? No, don't let us know what your point of view is. We will find out about the love later on in the passion. I think just make it very simple.
Who slept on the wet spot? Was I beneath or above? Who slept on the wet spot? Who lay in the lake of our love?
That needs more support. Let's just do who lay in the lake of our love. If you crescendo into the love, I think you'll actually find it easier than if you hold back.
Remember thee. Remember thee. Remember! Remember! Remember!
The Ansonia Hotel was one of the two large hotels that competed for the opera singers, and that was soundproof. And when they built it with a farm on the roof.
An actual farm.
An actual farm with chickens and ducks and a cow or so and some farm animals.
And did they grow things?
Oh yeah.
They had crops?
Yeah, well, they didn't have tractors running all day long.
Oh, that's good.
But it was a cute gimmick, but it soon wore out. You know?
Yeah, imagine.
Have a nice day.
Okay, you too. Thank you very much.
I know we're not as young as we used to be, but I'm not going to cut you breaks. I want you to sing.
Of course.
As you sing.
Art is a cruel mistress. It is so difficult. That is why we love it so much. Who slept on the wet spot? Was I beneath or above? Who slept on the wet spot? Who lay in the lake of our love? Who slept on the wet spot? I cannot remember, it seems, but my passion for that spot will stick evermore to my dreams. I introduced this song in the 1932 pre-code shocker, Torrents of Passion. That is the one where John Gilbert drank champagne out of my slipper. The poor man was so strung out on morphine, he never realized my foot was still in it. They say that is what ruined his voice, sucking the Piper Heidsieck off my big toe. In the film, to discover if Gilbert is being unfaithful, I masquerade as the cabaret singer Marushka. And in that guise, surrounded by balalaika players, I warble an old gypsy love song, loosely translated from the Romany as Who slept on the wet spot? very loosely translated. You pull one thread of that translation, you are naked. But sorry, I'm sorry, we are. I treasure the wet spot. It sets my heart beating for you. It's more than a wet spot. It's Saint Valentine's sacred goo. I worship the wet spot. I thrill to the smell and the sight. The sheet bearing that spot, it hasn't been washed since that night. The irony, of course, Gilbert falls madly in love with Marushka. Even at the end, you are never quite certain if he was really aware of my little deception. Years later, they tried a remake for Doris Day called Tickle My Mink. And they added a scene early on where James Garner, in the Gilbert role, discovers Doris's ruse. Of course, he never would have guessed it, not with her brilliant character work. But actually, the censors would not allow Garner to be unfaithful to Doris, even if he was being unfaithful to Doris with Doris. But in our day, we allowed for a tantalizing ambiguity.
Legendary beauties together.
We'd all heard the story, how Vera had been living at the Ansonia since the late 60s without ever paying rent. It began as a political statement. In those days, paying rent, like bathing or monogamy, was seen as covert support for the war in Vietnam. So Vera douses her rent bill in gasoline, sets it on fire in the middle of the lobby, and performs an interpretive dance on the horrors of napalm. Shouts of bravo mingled with chants of ho 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 Chi Minh, NLF is gonna win. Susan Sontag declared her the natural successor to Artaud and said this is where theater is going.
So the landlord takes it. Oh, in the interest of full disclosure, another reason Vera didn't pay rent is she had no money. Let's face it, she would embrace any political cause for a half-eaten burrito and a vial of crack. So the landlord takes her to court, and to delay her eviction, she demands an inspection. Inspector comes, and he actually finds a violation. A defective electrical outlet in her kitchen. Turns out, fixing this one electrical outlet would involve rewiring an entire wing of the building at a cost of $500,000 1960s dollars. So the landlord pays off the inspector, quietly drops the lawsuit, and Vera's home free, literally. Besides, landlord figures, how long can she live anyway? If nothing else, overexposure to cat litter will have her in a body bag inside of 6 months. Well, that was then. I guess in one of her old movies, we show the passage of time by pages flying off a calendar. The more appropriate image might be yellowing copies of the New York Post, piling up in her apartment, encroaching like Sleeping Beauty's briars. As with many great ladies of the stage and screen, Vera's fan base spent the 70s singing, "I Will Survive." And in the 80s, they didn't. Speaking of AIDS, what's funny? Just to get the laughs going here. No, I had this one friend, and he died. It was one of these ghastly AIDS deaths, right? He had brain cancer, he went blind, and this has been a very handsome guy, too. But in each of these situations, there's always a moment, an epiphany, if you will. And I'll never forget, I saw him, this wasn't at the very end, but he knew he was sick. But he was so excited because he discovered plastical surgical gloves so that he could practice safe fist fucking. And I thought, how beautiful. Here's a man stricken with a fatal disease who still finds a way to get a fist up his rectum. Stories from the quilt. Suffice to say, the rim job was becoming a lost art. Nous sont les rim jobs d'antan, as the poet says. And Vera Czymilitude seemed destined to be forgotten. A shriveled lettuce leaf on the compost heap of show business. Another turban-topped poster girl for osteoporosis, frailly wandering the halls of the Ansonia. She was reduced to giving blowjobs behind the juice bar at a health food store in exchange for free ginseng smoothies, and suffered added indignity when Najib refused to add the protein powder, saying she didn't need it if she would just swallow.
So I'm out on tour. I'm headlining a show called Yohimbe Dan and the Cayenne Conspiracy. And we're over in Abbeville, Cajun country, speaking of Cayenne. So I stumble into a small revival house showing a series called Pre-Code Shockers. It's movies made before 1933. And one of them is Torrents of Passion, starring John Gilbert and Vera Czymilitude. It's a famous shoe fetish scene. But what gets me, one part Vera's up on top of a samovar. Balalaika players are strolling in and out. And she sings an old gypsy love song, Who Slept on the Wet Spot? There's one thing I know, folks, it's a melody. I hear that one, and before you can say etouffee, every lonely heart and every dive bar on the Gulf Coast was drowning their sorrows to Who Slept on the Wet Spot. So as this cover of her old song starts inching up the charts, people suddenly remember Vera Czymilitude is still alive. So I fly her on down to New Orleans and I put her in my video. Just as I'm beginning the final chorus, there's Vera being tossed up and down on a scum-stained bedsheet by 6, count 'em 6, amputee bikers. I'm a genius. Then an R&B group up in Memphis changes their name to the Wet Spots and has a hit single with Vera Czymilitude eyes. Yeah, she was on a comeback high. It's while she was down here that Charlie Cullen, Catawba as he was back then, that's when he was the great hope of poetic realism. Anyway, he brings her his play, and Vera gets that last great role every actor dreams of. And Charlie, no. At least he had a chance to offer the promise he never fulfilled. Who knows? Although a few years ago he got a lot of press. Started getting letters from some serial killer.
Dressing the character. His name was Jim Gamble. It always seemed appropriate since he lived his life as if each day was a roll of the dice. He put a siren on his car, an old Stutterer. And then last summer, before Papa died, he drove me and Mama and my sister Skinny out to Roanoke to see a pageant about the lost colony. He started blaring that thing, and Mama near had a heart attack. And Skinny, God bless her, for the rest of her life, she loved to tell the story about how people were driving into ditches to get out of our way when we went 90 miles an hour down the Roanoke Highway. Jim and I were voted most popular and most in love in high school. And everybody thought we'd get married. Then one night I had this dream.
When I think Vera Czymilitude, I think inner truth. I think integrity. That means a great deal to me. It is true, I play from within. There are no easy effects. I let the role grow inside me, like a tapeworm. And when it is ready, I dangle a little food and out it comes. An eloquent paean to the actor's art. And now you have a new theatrical project on top of all this. How exactly did that come about? A young playwright brought me a script called Summer of the Dogwoods. Remember his name, Catawba Cullen. You're going to be hearing a great deal from him. He said, only Vera Czymilitude could breathe life. That is how he went, breathe life, into the role of Sabina. Where is the lone heart that nothing can find, that is lovely beneath the blue skies?
Good evening. My name is Stanley Thornside. You may be familiar with my worst-selling book, The Netherworld of Show Business. Our subject tonight is Vera Czymilitude, one-time famed director of the Chernobyl Arts Theater. Vera's entire history is fabricated. According to her resume, it's a gigantic lie. She's 150 years old. The first time I saw Vera was in the London stage version of I Am Curious Yellow. Vera's obsessed with the color yellow. She's obsessed with golden showers. You like to sing about golden showers while taking your golden shower. Well, at least it's not Roman showers.
I was laying in the branch that runs under the railroad tracks down by Mama's damson patch. Just laying there on top of the water, like a lily pad. I was in a long white dress with sleeves billowing around me. It was like that picture, the fair Ophelia, that I used to look at through our old stereoscope. And slowly I began to drift down the stream. I felt so free as I floated out of town, and the river widened. And from each shore, music seemed to swell up. It was that old song, no one to love, no one to love, why no one to love? The words are so sad, but it never made me feel sad because the melody is so beautiful. And that melody, as much as the current, seemed to carry me along, faster and faster, past little islands. Where have you roamed in this beautiful world that you are of no one to love? I certainly didn't feel sad then. No, I felt an exultation I'd never known. And then it began to turn dark. And the music on the shores changed to drum beats and animal noises. There were things swimming beside me, things I couldn't see. And I imagined them to be scaly creatures that were about to rear their heads up like the bow of some Viking ship with flashing eyes. The current was going too fast. I was having trouble keeping my head above water. Spray was going up my nose. I was thrashing and gasping, and then suddenly, I went over this huge waterfall. That's when I woke up, when I was falling. Skinny was sitting there, shaking me gently and laughing. After that, Jim and I grew apart. No
Vera Miles, who played Marion Crane's sister in Psycho? Well, I don't know about you, but I don't remember seeing Vera Miles in anything after Psycho. I don't know. This is just a theory. But I think that Vera Czymilitude bricked up Vera Miles in Norman Bates' fruit salad. Yes. Anyways, that Vera, she will deny it, of course, because she is such a liar. It's a work in progress, excuse me. Vera doesn't deserve me to memorize my script. We have a history. It's not your problem, but I thought it would be curious to provide a subtext.
I know my name is LeBlanc, but I am not French. I'm from Louisiana. My people were the cutthroats and the whores who got run out of France. They sent us to the swampland to die. Well, sniff this, you truffle pigs. Don't ever insinuate I'm some hygienically challenged, white flag waving, anemic Jew hater. I'm an American, as American as gangster movies.
What's up, bus driver? How you doing, brother? Oh, shoot! Who?
Rain slashed the city at 4 a.m. But I was a man on a mission, a holy war, to end the scourge of car alarms. My strategy: attack enough cars with out-of-control alarms. Owners eventually realize they're in greater danger with an alarm, and they stop using them. Surgical strikes, turning the enemy in on himself so he crumbles. My target that night was a major threat. An SUV 1500, alternating prolonged honks with buzzings and sirens. It picked up a brick from the curb and took aim at the windshield. Clean hit. Dent in the middle, cracks, spider webbing out. What a rush. Like being licked from head to toe by 6 Filipino houseboys wearing nothing but crotchless tutus. Adrenaline hurtled me down the street, around the corner, into an all-night newsstand. I could hang there for a few, then double back, assess the damage, and luxuriate in my newly released endorphins. They were just cutting the wires that bind the morning papers when I saw the headline: Vera Czymilitude had been murdered.
You've always believed in giving back to the community, and I know recently you've become a celebrity spokesperson for the Alliance of Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Stutterers. Yes, next Thursday is Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Stuttering Awareness Day, and I will take to the streets with my gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender stuttering brothers and sisters as they demand an end to the discriminatory hiring practices of the 900 phone sex lines. Their refusal to hire stutterers is nothing less than a return to the dark days of slavery. But the refusal of the 900 phone sex lines to hire stutterers, you don't think that could be based on issues of qualification? Well, if you are locked into some paternalistic, Eurocentric notion of what a phone sex operator should sound like, if you refuse to embrace diversity, if you sink to the level of elocutionary profiling,
I've been thinking about murder recently. The thing is, I mean, you get to a certain age. I've never been certain which age exactly is a certain age, but I'm pretty certain I'm there. You get to a certain age, you begin to think about all the things you haven't done. For better or for worse, I've never committed murder. Years ago, I had this one friend who, he wanted to go down to Peru because at that time, if you killed a native Indian, it was like, I think, a $5 fine. So he figured, you know, he'd be able to experience murder and not have to deal with any of those pesky legal consequences that we have up here. I was involved in one incident some years ago. This is in his late 70s. And I was living in this loft in the garment district. It was big. It had glass windows all across the north wall, up north. And it was, I was selling cocaine, okay? And I was actually doing very well. I had a lot of models as clients because they needed, it keeps their weight down, keeps the energy going. And I also had a client who was a diamond merchant. He was Boaz. He was an Israeli diamond merchant. And I don't know if you know this, but he carried around a large amount of diamonds. These people can't get bonded. Nobody will insure them. But he was a big guy. He'd been Moshe Dayan's bodyguard. I mean, this is the sort of person you need to carry around. This is before beepers and cell phones and things. So he would call for each stop he made to let his office know where he was. Except, of course, when he ducked into my building to come upstairs and buy some coke. So at that point, he had literally, you know, gone off the face of the earth. So anyway, he came up one day, and this friend of mine was up there, this woman, Anne, and she was, Anne was like a major player in my life for a number of years. How can I describe it? Sometimes a friend, and sometimes a lover, and sometimes she fed me lewds while I made it with her second husband on their living room floor. We shared a lot. But anyway, Anne was, I should tell you, Anne was very pretty. Sometimes when I describe her, people imagine some big hulking woman or something dangerous, but Anne had been around. She'd been on her own, I guess, about 12 or 13, and she lived with some mafioso out in Brooklyn, and they ran a brothel together until he went crazy and cut all her hair off or something. Anyway, but it's a whole other novel. But anyway, Anne was up there, so Boaz comes up, he sees Anne. Like I said, she was pretty. She had long hair at this point. She was phobic about cutting it after the whole incident. Anyway, so Boaz comes up, and he sees Anne, and he's, you know, ready to flirt. And he opened up, he always carried a case. He'd never shown me what was in it. He was trying to impress her. He opens up this case, and it had like an accordion bellows in it. And in each slip, he pulled out an envelope. It's just folded up paper, folded up like an envelope, and opened it up, and in each one was filled with diamonds. So anyway, so we're sitting there, we're talking, we're doing coke, and all of a sudden I look up, and Anne is over there, and she's waving. She used to carry around this little gun, sometimes very feminine, a little white-handled gun. And I look up, and she's over there waving the gun, you know, saying, I want to kill him, I want to kill him, I want to kill him. And so I said, excuse me, Boaz. Do another line, and I go over there. Yeah, and she's like, this is it, this is the big one. I want to kill him. This is our chance. So I had to instantly decide whether or not I was going to participate in murder. And, well, obviously I didn't. I mean, if if I had, I'd either be on my private island or I'd be somebody's bitch up in Dannemora, right? So I think the thing that tipped it for me, I had just seen this special about Alfred Hitchcock. And I don't know if he did this film, a rather mediocre film called Torn Curtain. There's one great scene in it. And Hitchcock, in this documentary, he actually said the whole reason he did this film was because he wanted to do this one scene. It was a murder scene in a cottage. And he wanted to show how hard it is to actually kill somebody. It's not like on TV where you hit them, they hit their head, and they're gone. I mean, this scene is like 5 minutes without music, and you know, they're pounding him, they're pounding his head, they drag him over, stick his head in the oven, and they're hitting him, and they have to be quiet too, so they're hitting him with this stuff. So I just had this image, like I said, Boaz was this big man, and this wounded bear thrashing around my apartment. And I guess what I'm saying is I didn't think we could get away with it. That's why I didn't do it. But, you know, for years afterwards, and she would throw this up to me from time to time. I mean, we were broke and I had no money. I'm trying to figure out some scam or whatever, you know, to do. And she would say, you should have let me kill that guy. You should have let me kill that guy. I don't know. He says, Balzac said, every fortune begins with a great crime. And I've often thought, you know, that was my great crime, and there went my fortune.
This just in. Famed actress Vera Czymilitude was brutally murdered last night at the benefit for the Alliance of Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Stutterers. Police are questioning Barbara Battering Babs Taliaferro, leader of a renegade group of lesbian stutterers who feel the organization as a whole is stifling their full victimhood potential. Observers say that Ms. Czymilitude, star of such films as If Summer Follows Spring, Does Autumn Fall, had early in the evening evinced signs of humor, a felony under lesbian law. But when she committed the capital insensitivity of completing a stutterer's sentence, an enraged Babs rammed a metal-studded dildo down her throat and crushed her windpipe. Babs was further distressed, our sources tell us, by a recent breakup with her life partner, though she claims it was amicable. Yeah, an amicable lesbian breakup. She didn't turn the gas on before she set the house on fire. Amicable. You know the medical term for an amicable lesbian breakup? A flesh wound. But seriously. Good. Paramedics had difficulty reaching the scene due to an anti-alarm riot at a nearby parking garage. All I can say is the cops must love this case. They could double their overtime, taking statements from a room full of stutterers.
Here we're going to do at this time of our show a little feature every week. We forgot the first feature, but we're going to do this one. It's called Lies of Our Time. Today's feature from the April issue of this year's Lies of Our Time magazine is asked us to pause for a moment in fellowship for the downwinders. Downwinders. So those are the people.
I ate cauliflower the other night, so crucified.
They lived around the testing sites of Nevada in the 50s and 60s, and whom our government documents called the low-use segment of the population. Which times are not recorded, right? So, who were consistently lied to by our government about the danger of radiation that they were exposed to.
This is how John Wayne was killed out in Utah.
That's right.
Yeah, John Wayne on the movie, the Genghis Khan movie. The Barbarian John Wayne and Susan Hayward and Agnes Moorehead, yes.
They all died.
They were filming out in Utah and the wind shifted and They were nuked, yes. Yes,
Right,
they all
the
got
big
cancer.
cancer.
Pedro Armendariz, yes.
All right.
Dave Powell was directing, he got the cancer, yes.
Wow.
All of them, yes. The government, they nuked John Wayne.
So, listen,
I mean, I saw that movie, it was really bad, but I think nuking them was a little really
that's a little far to go.
yes. A bad review was enough.
Seemed like Vera might have a posthumous ratings winner. Court TV was broadcasting Bab's murder trial. Then she fired her lawyer, insisted on defending herself, and the trial entered, I think it just entered its 37th month as she labors to plead her defense of gay and lesbian stutterer's rage. Court TV dropped it after a week. Recently I read where they had to replace the court stenographer. She complained of cramps from all the stopping and starting. Filed a disability claim, stutterer stenographer syndrome. Got early retirement. Full pension and benefits.
I slept on the wet spot. I'll willingly take pride of place. If when I rise from the wet spot, I come face to face with your face. And when we are married, and I am your new wedded wife, I promise to sleep on the wet spot and do so the rest of my life.
Bravo!
Thank you,
Bravo!
thank you. Recently, this was brought home to me. Literally. As you know, I live at the Ansonia Hotel. They were renovating an apartment, and when they broke into the wall, they discovered an entire section of the water pipe had completely disintegrated. It no longer existed, but no one had noticed, because over the years the waste and the refuse had built up and formed a lining, an inner pipe, if you will, so the water kept flowing. And I thought, this is rather like life. Everything falls apart, and things keep on moving, held together by all the crud.